Hey guys, what's up, Rental Retreat Expo? And hi to our virtual audience. I know there's a ton of you out there, so I'm gonna say hi to the camera. My name is Sean Rocky Jeech. You guys may know me if you do short-term rentals. I'm assuming some of you guys have a property or two here. I've been doing it 10 years, actually. And I started by accident. I was a newspaper consultant. That's how old I am. I was doing newspapers, and I put employees into apartments, and they moved out eventually, so I had like 3 empty apartments that were just burning rent, and somebody said in 2014 that they stayed in an Airbnb. And that was how I stopped losing money on these apartments, and now 10 years later, here I am teaching you guys, which is cool. I'm gonna be honest too, I actually had something I wanted to talk to you about, but then after coming through, this is my first time in Eastern Tennessee. Whoever lives here, you guys are lucky. The mountains are super pretty. You guys got it lucky. But I realized there's so many good properties in Tennessee. Who here has property around the Smoky Mountains? So you get it, right? There's tons of properties and they're all good. Who here is in a competitive area? Who here is a host who's got a lot of competitive? There's a few of you, right? And where I come from, the Midwest, really that's not the case. You can put a property up on Airbnb, your photos could look like this or like this, your hand could be in the shot, and people would still book your place, right? Because in the Midwest, there's not a lot of competition, but I decided because of how amazingly competitive the Smokies are, I'd like to teach you guys a couple cool tricks that'll get you booked even if there's 1,000 other of you just as well. So, who's ready to learn some stuff? Good. I'm going to put my computer up here. I want to make sure that this thing comes to life before we do this. Normally I would do slides, but I've got a confession. I hate them. PowerPoints suck. And what's cool is I've been working with my students a lot on market research, picking up properties, but then of course optimizing properties so that way they're prettier than your competition. And everything that we do, we literally do just from the Airbnb platform. We don't use any other softwares, and I hope there's not a vendor here who has a software because you guys probably will throw tomatoes at me right now. But we don't use AirDNA, we don't use Mashvisor, we don't use anything like that. Because Airbnb has an algorithm. Who here knows what an algorithm is, right? Okay, you guys are pretty awake, that's good. So algorithms really track audiences. And this is the coolest thing about Airbnb right now, is the harder that Airbnb gets, the better the data gets. Because Airbnb has to filter through thousands of listings and show us on the very first page where they think they're gonna make their money. Because let's say you're the first time user on Airbnb. You don't know what you like necessarily. Airbnb is gonna put everything in front of you based on the data that they have, and they'll go, I think she'll buy this property, right? But if you've been here maybe 3 times on Airbnb and you've always booked cabins, Airbnb is just gonna show you more cabins. As they collect data, they start to drill down. So if you are new to an area, like say Pigeon Forge, and you wanted to know what kind of property you should pick up or how you should design your property, there's really no magic to this, but then just to look on the Airbnb platform and see what they show you. And I wanna show you something that's really kind of spooky. The reason why I killed my slides is, you notice this button at the bottom center says over 1,000 listings, right? Let me do this. Let me actually increase the guest count. We're gonna filter out any listings that don't sleep 12 people. And let's show that button again. That button is still over 1,000 listings. What do you think the likelihood of you getting on first page is when there's 1,000, 1,500 listings that sleep 12 people? And you know, let's do something else. Let's add a pool. Who here wants to guess how many listings are gonna be left after we put a pool? 700. Who said 700? Did you spy on my note? I didn't write any notes. How do you know these things?
I'm a big follower.
Yeah, 785 listings have a pool and can sleep 12 people. Right, so actually let's click the button. So when Airbnb knows that you're searching for 12 people in a pool, you notice how all of the photos suddenly start to have a pool? You get it? Airbnb knows, based on search metrics, what to show a person based on what they are most likely to buy. Airbnb is a funnel, like an Amazon product, right? Who here has an Amazon account? Who here doesn't want to raise their hand? Raise your hand, okay? Right, cool. So Amazon knows that if they put a list of things in front of you based on a search, what products are most likely to sell. The worst thing that Amazon or Airbnb could do is to show you something that you don't like, you build a distaste for the experience, and you never open Airbnb ever again. That'd be the worst thing. Right? So they have to give you a combination of aspirational stuff that they think that you're going to be impressed by, and then functional stuff that they think that you're actually going to buy. The secret to the Airbnb algorithm is they're loyal to 2 groups. The groups of window shoppers and the people who actually need something now. So they give you a little bit of both. Normally, even when you search for 2 guests or 3 guests, watch this. They don't just show you studio apartments when you search for 3 guests, because they still want to show you an aspirational side of this. If you notice, I'm gonna zoom in here. See how that says 8 beds and this one says 12 beds? Do 3 people need 12 beds? Probably not, right? So there is absolutely still an aspirational side to the search algorithm. What I want to teach you guys to do is to cheat by spying on your competition and then doing stuff that they do but do it better, and then do stuff that they don't do. Now, in Pigeon Forge, we are starting to see this stuff. This listing specifically, everything that I'm teaching my students to do lately has to do with redoing the title and the thumbnail. You notice how that says new pool, sauna, mini golf arcade? Who here still has a title on their Airbnb like the Getaway Cottage or the something house or quiet retreat? Remember 5-7 years ago, everybody had this like elegant luxury retreat, blah, 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 whatever, right? We all named it. But you know why this is no longer valid? Where it says cabin in Pigeon Forge, that's where your title used to be, right? They moved your title down to the second line now. You are no longer a title. Your title's actually a subtitle. Really weird, right? So now we know that you're a cabin in Pigeon Forge and that's your title, you're stuck with that. And now people want to know, well, what makes this cabin in Pigeon Forge special? And saying that you are the yellow house or the getaway retreat doesn't actually increase people's click. So there's two things that I like to do. One is load amenities, and this person did that really, really well, right? It's like, wait, there's more. Because just like a YouTube video, and now I'm really starting to tell you where I learn everything, right? Just like a YouTube video, we've got an image and we've got some text. And you guys will either click or you won't based on the image and the text, right? Well, the image alone is cool with the mushroom and the mural, but then the text creates more perceived value. And when there's 1,000 listings with the pool, and everybody is showing their pool in the photo, what else can you do? You've already shown the pool, like there will be 40 other listings next to you showing a pool. So your title can actually say that you've got free firewood, or that you've got a hot tub, or that you've got like a jungle gym or a tree house, or a ninja warrior court, or like a pickleball court or anything like that. Amenities loading. Something we're doing now too, which is actually really hard to show you, so I'm gonna try to do this with a mental game, is use adjectives strategically. Who here knows what vertical gardening is, right? For those of you that don't know what vertical gardening is, can you kind of imagine what that is? What do you think a vertical garden looks like? Yeah, well, vertical gardening is actually where they buy an old building and they put a garden on every floor of the building and use UV lights. Who here knows what a cloud forest is? You've been to Costa Rica. Lucky you. Anybody else? Could you guess what a cloud forest is? Those who don't know, give me a guess. Well, yeah, it is a forest with clouds. The clouds aren't the forest, but there's a forest with clouds. So a cloud forest is the upper band of a rainforest in Costa Rica and other places in the world where the trees are in the clouds because it's such high altitude. And there's other things that we say that if you didn't know what that meant, you'd be like, you'd visualize and go, what the hell is that? Like a blood moon. You watch enough movies, you're gonna assume the blood moon is actually something else, right? Depending on what movies you watch. And so there's a curiosity gap between what you say and what people presume you mean, and sometimes they just have to find out. So if you claim something with a phrase that doesn't make intuitive sense, or like, if that is literally what I think they said, I could not imagine that actually exists, like blood moon, vertical gardening, cloud forest. We can use that in the title. So I've been teaching my students to theme their hot tubs, to like use Viking stuff, to like hang cool Viking lamps and have some mead steins and just some other stuff and call it a Celtic hot tub. There is no such thing as a Celtic hot tub. Not necessarily. There are Nordic hot tubs that are made like that, look like they're made out of a barrel sauna. But if you said something like a Celtic hot tub or a botanical hot tub, you can only imagine what a botanical hot tub could mean. So what you would basically do for a botanical hot tub is we create an enclosure with a cabana and just hang a bunch of vines and plants and other stuff and create this enclosure that's completely plant surrounded. And it serves you a few ways. Any of you who just have a hot tub, you're screwing up, because a hot tub is an experiential amenity. And to sit in a hot tub next to a fence, next to the trash bin, is really not a cool way to spend time in a hot tub, right? It's so not romantic. So the first thing I teach my students to do is create a fishbowl where just beyond arm's reach, they can't touch the outer wall of wherever the hot tub is, but then from there you create a facade. You can build an obstructive fence, you can use bamboo, you can use plants, you can use whatever. You can use a bunch of Viking stuff, hanging some pelts or whatever, make it look like it's from The Witcher, and you now have this experiential hot tub. But you not only get the experiential design, it looks cooler in photos, because you can take that photo and everything just looks banging, right? But then the name is going to be the part that really plays a game here, because you're not going to show the hot tub in your hero photo, because Airbnb is now changing people's hero photos sometimes based on what they want to show, based on your search. So your hot tub's not going to show up when people search for a pool, but your title will say that you have a volcanic hot tub because you built a facade that makes it look like the hot tub is in the top of a volcano. Right? And that photo will be in your photo reel somewhere, but when somebody sees that you've got a volcanic hot tub, they'll go, wait, hold on, what does that say? Click, I have to see what that says. So they will click because of the curiosity gap. Now, it doesn't matter if they book with you, because since Airbnb is a performance funnel, they want to see every action. Clicks matter, so views matter. And the fact that somebody clicks and then goes to your photos and looks for that hot tub, that means that they don't bounce, right? Because bounce percentage is a big thing for websites. So if somebody clicked, didn't like your first 5 photos and left, like let me show you an example of what the first 5 photos look like. Let's just click on any one of them. These first 5 photos is how somebody judges whether or not they stay on your listing. These are the most important 5 photos you could ever have. So if they're all of your living room, you've already screwed up. 5 ugly living room photos would be very boring. But if your hot tub is not showing in the first 5 photos, what button do you think they click? They know, they've been on Airbnb before. They know where the show all photos button is, because 60% of travelers, the very first thing they do is look at the photos. So they do this all the time. They're gonna click here and they're gonna scroll down to look for that volcanic hot tub, wherever it is down here. And see that hot tub? Does that really look experiential? No, it's nice. They can sit in it, but there's really nothing special about it. And in places like Miami or Pigeon Forge or San Diego, when every property's nice, when every property has a hot tub, when every property has a pool, when every property is a log cabin with huge wood like trusses that go across the ceiling, we have to do something else. So if you guys have a barrel sauna, just decorate the outside of the barrel sauna with like vines and stuff like that too. Just do something. Make it look like there's an overgrowth going over your barrel sauna, and all of a sudden the thing looks really cool. Instead of just some plain, pardon my French, plain ass sauna sitting in your lawn. Like you're like, oh, I'm supposed to buy one of these for my Airbnb, so let me just set it there and just call it a day. There are too many investors that are still real estate investors. Who here got into this because of real estate first? So who here is like accustomed to very narrow cash flow on a property? When you're a long-term landlord, sometimes you don't even cash flow on a property. So we invest what we have to be able to clear the bar. But in hospitality, what we should be doing is investing money that no one else would dare invest. Right? The best properties that you will see on, let me click this one because this one isn't the best property. Let's make it go away because there are better ones out there. But the best properties on Airbnb are ones that accidentally crushed it because they didn't know that they shouldn't spend that much money on a listing. You've seen those ones. They're amazing. And this is actually proven when we go to Kissimmee, Florida. Somebody proved the model, and now Kissimmee, Florida, when you go and search for, let's just bring it up to 9. When we search in Kissimmee, Florida, you only see listings where they spent $150,000 on the property on the inside. They're putting in bowling alleys. The rooms are completely immersive. There's not just a mural wall. The whole room is like Moana. Somebody made a stupid decision once and spent way too much money on their Airbnb and proved that those properties make an accelerated amount of cash flow, just a nuts amount of cash flow. So then next thing you know, somebody like myself was looking on Airbnb going, oh, that one's really cool, and it's always booked. You can actually see this. This is how we do our market research. We just look at a listing, and you just go click on the calendar. And when you click on the calendar, you can see how booked the thing is. See the grayed out dates and the black dates? Those are reservations. That's easy enough. And here's what's really cool. I can actually see what they charge too. So I can reverse engineer their pricing strategy by picking these 4 dates and seeing what they charge. They're $600 a night for these 4 days. But I can go forward to May, see what they charge for these 7 days. Here, they're $416. And I can flip through all their dates and reverse engineer what they're charging month over month. And I can tell you how much money this listing makes per year. These listings make a ton of money because they spent a ton of money. Instead of spending $100,000 on immersive rooms like you do in Kissimmee, Florida, this is the bar that you have to meet for Disney. If you don't do this, you'll get crushed. One of my students bought a property from a lady who joined some program. And he does a lot of short form content. I don't know what his name is. But he bought this property from a lady who spent $50,000 on an 8-bedroom house in Kissimmee. And she put a little wallpaper of Minions up, like a square. Didn't even cover the whole wall. A little bit bigger than that. And the room was like not quite as wide as this, but it was a room that had 2 queen-size beds. And they had the cheap rail beds, those really ugly, the stuff that everybody has. They're just stupid ugly. And so there's this Minion wallpaper that didn't even cover the whole room. They had Minion duvet covers, and then they had a Minion rug, and that was their theme. And when you went to their theater, they had 8 really comfy red chairs and a popcorn station, but the rug and the walls and everything else were just completely white. The room was plain, and every single room in the house had some half-assed attempt at being a Disney house. But when the parents are going through going, I want to give my kid a magical experience, you think they're going to pick that one? No, it's not it. Well, here's another thing we found from internal data, that people will max out their budget in order to get a little bit more quality. And so to say this in a better way, if your budget's $600 a night, and you have a listing that's like an 8 out of 10 for $400, and a listing that's like an 8.5 out of 10 for $550, you'll take the 8.5 for $150 more. Even though logically the value you're getting for that extra $150 a night doesn't make any sense. but you're like, my budget's 600 and I want the best that I deserve. That's hospitality. People will spend stupid money. If I can give you a few things that will let you print more money, this first one is it. If you have a hot tub, try to find a way to create what I call the snow globe effect. When you're sitting in the hot tub, I want you to be able to look in any direction, and just like you're in a snow globe, you're in this little world. And the great thing about a hot tub is it's this kind of like this immersive, captivated point where it's not like the person's gonna move around. You don't have to do something amazing where if I walk over here 5 feet, everything still has to look good. Everything can be two-dimensional facades. Just like if you're on a Disney ride, when you're going through a Disney ride, they make sure that everything looks good from where you're sitting. But if you went to the other side of that cardboard wall that they made, it's literally just cardboard. Facades are powerful, and you probably know.
I do.
Yeah, build your little fishbowl with your hot tub and any other immersive experience you can get your hands on. They will look great in photos from the angle that the customer is sitting in. They will get you more bookings, and then find a fancy name for it, like volcanic hot tub, and people will click to find out what a volcanic hot tub is. And then they will still book with you because your hot tub's cool. But you'll get more clicks, which gives you an upcycle on the algorithm, and you get more hang time because your first 5 photos don't show this amenity that you've clued in on your title, so they go dig down for those photos, so you get more hang time on your listing. That'll upcycle your performance. And what we just saw is there's 1,000 listings or more that have 12 persons or better in this area. And you will get booked if you're on the first couple of pages, but if you're a great listing and you're not in the first couple of pages, the percentage that you'll get booked per like guest search experience is like precipitously lower. So we need to find a way to maximize our first page impression results, which is top of funnel data from Airbnb, and then whether or not you delivered a good guest experience on the back end. Those are the 2 biggest ones. And for any of you who feel like there's nothing else that you can do, you've maxed out your listings quality, retailing is the next big thing. We've seen immense amount of money from just selling all sorts of random stuff. And a place like this, I would make a to-go bag of whatever people tend to buy when they're like thrifting, or not thrifting, but a souvenir. Like in Canada, people would buy a bear mug, or like they buy a hoodie from their favorite canyon or something. But the kids were all unruly and they were having a bad day arguing with their wife, and they decided that they didn't want to buy something that day, but that was the one day that they had to go souveniring. So now they're about to leave, and they promised their bud that they would bring something back, and so now they've got to go and they don't have any souvenirs. So in destinations like this, having like a little like souvenir section where you just have a card that says this is the cost for this stuff, and it's an honor system, just take it off the counter. And like just send us the money on Airbnb or we'll charge you when it goes. Your cleaners will clean, set up everything, take a photo of your little station to make sure that everything's there, and then when they come back and clean anything that's gone, you just charge them for it. And we've never had an issue for stuff like this. So a place that's good with coffee, you have the cool beaned coffee. A place like in New Mexico, you can have like turquoise style jewelry stuff, or like turquoise style knickknacks, Indian knickknacks, stuff like that. Here, I don't have a property here in Tennessee. I'm sure you guys would figure it out.
Moonshine.
That would be a rough one, but you might be able to get away with that. Like moonshine apple pie, like the apple pie moonshine stuff. Like a make your own moonshine kit. I don't know if you're allowed to sell that. And aside from the to-go souvenirs concept, that's just one concept. You can sell, like what we like to do for more luxury studios is to sell bottles of champagne in the fridge, and we'll have 2 champagne flutes with 1 Ferrero Rocher in each flute, right? All wrapped up. They're not unwrapped. But each one has a Ferrero Rocher dropped in and the champagne, and we have a card in the fridge that says the champagne's $35 and the chocolates are $2 a piece. They'll take the champagnes and the chocolate and they'll pop the wine and they'll do their thing. $39, just like that. And around the house, you can find that there's product placement that just makes sense. And like having a champagne in the fridge, it's really easy to do. You can have a snack basket that has some free stuff, but then you have a premium snack basket that has some really good stuff. And I've noticed that people will buy stuff as long as it's premium. So having this quality bottle of water or better, you can sell this for $6 or $8 a bottle. If you're trying to sell these, they would want to murder you because this is offensive to sell. But if you have something that implies any luxury or care at all, they'll suddenly buy. We charge about 3.5x markup on anything that we sell when we retail. So if you sell protein bars, instead of just selling like a Snickers bar, the Snickers should be free, but you have good protein bars, those should cost $7, $8 a bar, and people will spend money on them. It's really cool. And so the amount of money that you can make retailing could increase your monthly revenue for a 2-bedroom property like $300 or $400 a month. For a luxury property that has 5 or 6 bedrooms, you can sell all sorts of weird stuff. I've got students that make charcuterie boards, like custom charcuterie boards to order for $200, $300 a board. Dig into this concept of retailing as a way to outlive your competition. Because what I would like to summarize, I'll do Q&A if I actually run too quick because I talk really fast. I don't know if you guys noticed that.
No, you do not.
Yeah, I talk super fast. So to summarize, our industry has a really weird cycle. Unlike real estate, we've got a 3-year or 4-year boom bust. What happens is somebody makes a lot of money and then starts a YouTube channel and says, hey guys, you can do Airbnb too. And then floods the market, which I did to Houston. I flooded Houston with probably 3,000 plus listings from people who watch my channel. And then what happened is there's too many listings. And what happens when there's too many listings, not enough customers? The bottom falls out, and it falls out hard. Airbnb's algorithm upcycles the good ones and protects the very top, but then everybody else washes out. And it took me a while to realize this concept of equilibrium. Every market has a total amount of revenue that they can support this business. And equilibrium depends on how volatile our seasons are. So imagine a market that properties where your mortgage is $5,000 made $50,000 a month in peak, like somewhere like Miami or San Diego. Because there's so much money in peak, equilibrium might actually look like having near enough peak volume. So let's say there's 10,000 travelers a weekend. Well, there might actually be like 9,500 listings, because in peak season, there's so much money that people will let their listing die for 6 months in the winter, and they might be okay with that. In a market like Dallas, where we only have like a 30 or 40% swing in seasonality, well, we don't have that same representation of listings in relation to peak season. We have a lot less. So if Dallas ever had a big event, there's just way less Airbnbs to meet that extra demand, because we didn't meet equilibrium near what we would call our peak month. And I said that in a really wonky way, but if you ever see a market have a 300% swing from like peak season to low season, you'll find the bottom will fall out almost every single year in those markets, because people get in because they always track the really good listings. But then when slow season comes, they had no clue slow season was going to suck that much. So markets like that, like Pigeon Forge would be one of them, is people come in expecting equilibrium to be more of a normal relationship for a normal month, but where equilibrium exists in supply and demand actually has to do more with like only 2 months of the year. And then the bottom falls out. In a market like this, or in say Milwaukee, which is seasonal, you retailing allows you to make a couple extra $100 a month minimum, or $400 more a month, and that bottom like revenue addition allows you to survive even if you weren't one of the very top of the listings. You might make a ton of money for a couple months, and then you're totally beleaguered the rest of the year. When the bottom falls out, as long as you held on, there'll be less listings next year, and you'll make even more money in the peak season next year. In a 4-year cycle, you may find that you'll make like 220% ROI in your best year and like 102 in your worst year. As long as you hold on in the worst year, the next year usually tends to be the best one, because the bottom falls out, because people just give up. Retailing is one of those ways that you can ride out a down market by finding extra revenues that no one else does. We also have like a really aggressive midterm strategy in our really seasonal markets. Like in Chicago, January, February, if over 50% of our properties aren't pre-booked in January, February for monthly stays, then we failed our strategy. It's a big pricing strategy for us. So deviating on price and then retailing are two main ways that you can make extra revenue where no one else is making it, and that will allow you to ride out bad seasons. Thanks for coming to my tangential TED Talk on that. Based on how much time we have leta, I'd like to do some Q&A, and we might be able to do virtual ones too if you guys can take those. So who has questions? So this is something I think they're beta testing, because one of my students has said that 3 times they've had their photo changed, even though they're not a private room. And Airbnb does this with private rooms. If you have a private room, they will change your hero photo to make sure that's the best representation for your listing. But I think they're beta testing it with whole listings. I can't prove it completely yet, because only one of my students has said that they've been like actually changing their hero photo. But I do believe that this is something Airbnb is testing. Yeah, they don't tell us everything, unfortunately. We have to find out the hard way. Yes?
If you were to start over today, what would you do differently? Or what do you wish you would have done so?
I was really bad at design because I was a boy, right? I was like a 25-year-old kid who knew nothing. If I was going to start all over, and I wanted to make as few mistakes as possible, I would look at highly competitive markets like Miami or Chicago and find out what people are doing to be good there. And then I'd go to a sleepy market like Oklahoma City, St. Louis, in the Midwest, and bring the heat somewhere where they haven't even woke up to the idea yet. The best way to put this is some industries are really, really competitive, and so there's a lot of innovation. Some industries are not competitive and there's no innovation. Well, we get the same effect. I've got a student in Finland. I've got a student in 42 countries now. So a lot of countries. And one of my newest students is from Finland, and nobody changes their prices any day of the year. Just the whole year, they're all the same price. And so here's the hack for that. If you're in a market like that, in peak season, jack your rate up 400% and let everybody else get booked. And then a couple months out, decide how high you want to be. But to price yourself out of the market right away and see how strong the market is. And in slow season, just drop your rate like 10% below everybody else, because nobody else is dropping their rates. So you can get booked first at a 10% discount, but then hold out for like a 300% markup in a market that nobody changes their price. Really cool opportunity for him. But that just shows how not innovative Finland is. So as far as design goes, this happens all the time. You go to Milwaukee and look up listings in Milwaukee, the photos are like super dark. There's like one tiny window over there and they think that that's enough light for their photos. We've seen those listings, right? So if you just bring good photography to somewhere like Oklahoma City or Milwaukee, you're gonna do much better. You're gonna beat everybody out. And if you look at some of these high-rise properties in Dubai or Chicago or Miami, and you decide to do like an apartment in Milwaukee with the same level of design that they bring, no one else can compete with you. So in a way, it's a form of arbitrage. Like, it's an innovation arbitrage play. You go to the most competitive markets, find a winner, and just take it to a sleepy town. And I would just literally copy the best listings in a slightly less competitive market. And it would, I can pretty much say it would guarantee results. Yeah, it's cheating.
About what would you expect people to pay for theme rooms that are the experience and they have creative furniture, and then do you think that's a good idea?
So themes are great depending on where you are. Like Kissimmee, Florida, you need to have something like it. Some themes cost more money than others because you have to custom fabricate. That Moana room that I mentioned, like they made a custom chandelier that looks like a surfboard. I like themes that make it easy to accomplish in less competitive markets. Like, so if you want to do WandaVision, that would be an easy theme because it's just mid-century modern furniture, really. And then you have some Marvel posters. Boom, you're in WandaVision. But some themes, if you wanted to do like a Batman theme, if you wanted the kid's bed to actually look like the Batmobile, that would cost a lot of money to make. So we kind of have to be careful with what we're going to spend based on the ROI. So if I was going to do market research in a city, I would go on to Airbnb and you remember that price bar thing where I showed you the 1,000 listings button? There's a price bar slider there. And I would take the slider and I'd ramp it up till I got to like the top 50 listings in the market based on price, 50 most expensive listings. And I would run a population of just those 50 listings and see how good they are. And I want to see how booked they are too. If the really expensive listings aren't really getting any bookings, then it might just be too luxurious for the market, and spending a lot of money on a theme may not have the ROI. So I'd always try to prove my ROI. I had a student in some weird part of Pennsylvania that is making $1,000 a night on an average property. And for that reason, there's no need to do a theme, because at the point that you get to be good enough to make that money, spending an extra like $20,000 on the space may not actually make you any more money, because you're already getting what I would call preference. So some markets, in order to make $1,000 a night, you'd have to put in that investment, but we'd have to prove that it's there. Kissimmee, Florida is like an obvious example. People spend the money. There's a place in Milwaukee that has a very like antiquated luxury look, like it looks like it's from the late 1800s. They make $3,000 a night for what looks like to be just a legitimately old, potentially haunted mansion house, right? It's got that vibe. You can almost see the cobwebs or feel the cobwebs through the photos. It's got that look, and they make like $3,200 a night is what they make. And so any market that you want to make a lot of money, you can just like crop out all the bottom ones and look at the best listings and just make sure that expensive listings are making money. If expensive listings are making money, then you can ask, okay, do I do a theme to deviate from the representative inventory that's there? Is a theme the way that I can get to the side of these ones and gain preference? Some markets may not do well with a theme, but they do really well with like a very fashion-forward type of design. So for example, like Santa Monica Pier area. If you think about the customers that go to Santa Monica, South Florida, they want a certain type of experience. They want to go to the beach. They want to live a luxury life. I would do a Japandi like design style, and that's not a theme, but in a design style in a way is a theme, because you want to meet the market where the customer has a desire and you can meet that desire. A lot of places doing a theme may be a very brave and counterculture idea because nobody else does themes. So if I was going to do themes in a market that I don't know for sure that themes are what people want, like just all sorts of different themes, I try to find like an offshoot, like I was telling you, like a monochromatic space. One of my properties is completely orange. The furniture, the couch, the walls. I made an LED sign that says nothing rhymes with you either. I think it's cute. And people love it. The fact that the whole room is orange, which I got from a bar in Milwaukee when I went to college. The basement of this bar was completely tangerine. They called it the tangerine room. The ceilings were super short and all the furniture was orange. And it's one of the most memorable rooms I've ever stood in. And so I decided to copy it from a memory from 100 years ago. Yeah, and it's worked out. And so a monochromatic room could be a theme. The theme was orange. You could do a Back to the Future theme or Mario theme, but those themes we have to prove that there's a desire for it, and nostalgia is a great one. So Back to the Future and Mario have enough nostalgia that you know that a broad demographic at a certain age would buy into it, but again, we have to know that that market still spends the money, because the same customer is going to be there. If I can actually put a parentheses on this, every market will have customers with budgets, and they will spend their budgets. Like I told you, they'll max out their budget for quality. Depending on what's out there, they'll spend the money. So if you can prove that a market is spending XYZ dollars, you know the money's there. Now you're trying to get that same customer that we've proved exists to prefer you. We want to shift their preference. And a theme could be a way to do it. But if there's not a customer spending $800 a night in a space, or in a city, then there's no room for an $800 a night listing. This industry is old enough now that almost every place on the planet you can prove that somebody has the money. If you asked me 6 or 7 years ago, I'd say just go nuts and find out, because it was too young. There was not enough data. But now in almost every market, we've been around long enough that somebody has tried something nice. And if the nice ones are failing, don't do it. And you actually see this. If you go on Airbnb search like I just showed you, you can actually go and search in Atlanta, and you'll see these $1,100 listings that have pools and hot tubs, and no one is booking them. Perhaps, I'm using Atlanta as a hypothetical, but there are markets that I've seen that no one is booking these listings because the customer's just not there. So yeah, look both ways.
Do you consider theme and experience kind of the same thing? So like we live near Asheville, North Carolina, so you see a lot of these tree houses and people that have taken like an old school bus, dropped it in the middle of the woods. Is that conceptually the same thing, or are those two completely
They hold hands, but they're different. I remember this from marketing. Experiential marketing is putting somebody in the middle of something. To have an experiential design is to have something that goes beyond, hey, look, a bedroom, into something where it's immersive. So I think experiential listings are immersive listings, but to be immersive is a level of quality that doesn't necessarily imply theme. For example, this is a chandelier, and most places don't have them. And most places don't paint the ceilings. And so you could have an experiential listing that is, imagine a room that's like jade or emerald green, and then has like really strong white accents. And you've got this huge canopy bed that maybe it's like a white canopy bed. You've got this white canopy bed, and you've got this like emerald green backdrop, and you've got white sheets and really cool rug and stuff. And if you could just imagine what that room would look like if it was complete, you might even do those box panels where there's the trim that you make the big rectangles out of. You do that. And if you can imagine that room right now, if I imagine an emerald green room with a big white canopy board, like canopy bed and the panels and a cool chandelier, whatever you imagine right now would be experiential, because you're trying to create an imaginary space that somebody would want to sit into. And some of you who don't have that visual mind, I'm sorry, I failed you. I'd do it in ChatGPT right now if my computer just didn't die. But that would be the difference between experiential and a theme, because an emerald green room isn't necessarily a theme, but it is experiential. And a theme, like the lady from Kiss Me that I said with the bad Minions room, that was a terrible theme that was not experiential, but it was technically a theme. So I think a theme means to carve into a niche of people and create a stronger relationship with a niche in a pre-calculated way is probably what a theme could be designed as, where experiential is trying to take any customer and have a louder, more emotional relationship with them based on how well you did the listing. So an experiential listing or experiential design or immersive design could hit a number of different customers, like strongly just because you did well, where a theme is looking to say, we're not for these people, but we are for these people. And so even at the same level of investment, we'll hit harder with these than these. So themes make a trade-off, I think, and experiential doesn't. Yes, ma'am?
So you talk a lot about like design, like making a feeling of somebody,
Mm-hmm.
which I truly believe as well. What is your thought on like, you know, people who have very experienced like themed Airbnbs, influencers, they do like marketing shoots in the properties. What is your viewpoint on that?
So influencers in a like well-designed space?
Yeah, like I have a friend who like has properties in Joshua Tree. So yes, you see the hot tub, it's a cowboy tub. It's very, you know, they put the plants around it. Maybe they give it a cool name, but then they put someone in it who's like, oh, we're sitting in the hot tub together and we have our champagne.
Like models for your photos or
Yes.
influencers for?
No,
okay.
like models for your photos, like on your listings on Airbnb.
Absolutely. Models can work to imply the type of experience that people should expect. And it also can help you guide your demographics. If you have a problem with parties, right, you don't want a certain type of group of people, then like I remember a woman, she did bachelorette party themed, and she made sure that she had girls in there, and she was able to get a stronger pull from her main audience by implying her demographic in her photos. Really, that really worked. If anybody who might have thought her question was about getting influencers to come take video, Shelby Church failed at her own property. And she's a huge influencer, and her influence still couldn't keep her place booked. So do not give an influencer a free place to stay. Instead, build something so amazing that influencers will pay double. One of my students has a property by Coachella Valley. He made $176 during Coachella week. $176,000. I hope I said thousand.
Wait, what?
$176, sorry. Let's add that, let's multiply that by 1,000. $176,000 for a 5-day stay during Coachella. And absolutely influencers paid for that because he built a space that they needed the space. I have a weird fact because one of my friends does financial management for influencers. OnlyFans models, 25% of the money they make, they spend on locations. So yeah, if any of us have a luxury Airbnb property, yes, you're getting booked by OnlyFans models, and yes, they will pay full price, and they book everything because they just need new places to shoot. And it's, yeah, so influencers pay money, absolutely do. Because I had an idea on yours. As you were asking your question, about a year ago, I started using this phrase, defend with design, to my students. I don't know where it came from, but it was just a phrase I started using. This concept of defending with design is that when we discuss this concept of equilibrium, when there's enough customers for the supply, everybody will get booked when there's enough customers. But the moment we have an absence of customers, then Airbnb has to decide who lives and dies. Right? So they'll filter stuff to the top of the algorithm, and people will book based on the first couple of pages, and there will be people who die on the vine because there's just not enough customers. And because we know this to be true, and we just want to not be on the bottom, that's the biggest thing. Because if you're at the bottom, you're gonna be the first to die when the demand dries up. But if we can stay at the middle or the top, that's all we need, where the air is a little bit more thin. If you defend with design, you're designing your space not for peak season, you're designing your space to not die in slow season, is the concept. Sure, good design can make you more money in peak season, maybe, if you do your pricing well, but a lot of people don't know how to maximize, they're not greedy enough in peak season. I guarantee all of you are not greedy enough in peak season. You get booked 3 months out. If you get booked 2 or 3 months out, you are too cheap in peak season, guarantee you. You want to be one of the last booked in peak season. So with that said, you design your place because you think that it's going to make you a lot of money in peak season, and you guys aren't even reaching for the sky there, but you don't realize that having a good design is actually what gives you preference in slow season. And hot tubs are a big way to do this too. Features. There are stratospheres of listings. You've got super ugly listings that are $98 a night. You've got decent listings that are $150. Then you've got decent ones with hot tubs that are $250. Bangers with hot tubs, MTV cribs at $500 plus. If you have a hot tub and like 8 months from slow season, right? Let's say now is February. Let's imagine that September was slow season. Right now, drop your prices to compete with everybody who does not have a hot tub, and you'll probably get booked super, super far in advance, just because you dropped your hot tub listing into a stratosphere of price where there are no hot tubs. So you can defend with features and you can defend with design. Because the moment you drop your rate just enough that everybody in your price bracket can't compete with you, you become the best listing at that price. And like we said before, people max out their budgets for just a little bit better value. So defend with design, not for peak season, but so that way you can have something more attractive when slow season comes.
When you're moving into a new market, is it better to start from scratch or go with something more?
I like starting from scratch as long as you feel like you know enough about the industry. It wouldn't be your first listing. Cool. If it's not your first listing, then you should have enough like context and nuance to like open up search in that new market. Let's say you're going to Cincinnati. You search in Cincinnati, see what the best listings are, and you just try to recreate whatever you find out to be the best about Cincinnati. And let's use Cleveland instead. Cleveland, probably some of the best properties are these old warehouse properties, big windows, like where, remember the whole Mistake on the Lake thing? Right? A lot of industrial era stuff. You get a big factory loft with those big pipes in the brick, and those are probably the things that make a ton of money. And so if you got something out of the box, you may not get that. Somebody's giving you some shitty house in some gentrified market where it's like one of those shotgun houses that have a weird, stupid shape, and they put furniture in there that's probably nice, but they're trying to get you for money. So they do this turnkey thing. I actually really don't like turnkey in a lot of ways. If you know enough about the industry, you can know when a turnkey is good, but most of the time they're not. So it's better to do something from scratch so you can be very specific about what you're putting into the market, because like I just said, the harder a market is, the more data we get. Like in Chicago's highly competitive, and so is Dubai. But I'll tell you one thing about Dubai. I can guarantee that I'll make as much money as the best person in Dubai because I know how to be exactly the same as the best person in Dubai. It's easy to copy somebody. And the one thing that I think I know now that I didn't even know a year ago is the main thing that makes money in Dubai or in Crete is the view. So if I have an apartment with a Roman Colosseum view, it will make 250% more than the same building facing the other way. In Dubai, if I have a Burj Khalifa view, it'll make 40%, 50% more than one facing the other way. Just the view alone. Same exact unit. And so this comes from time, a lot of time and mistakes. But if you know enough about what makes money, then you will actually pick up the thing that exactly makes money because you know well enough. If you know nothing about Airbnb, then you should do turnkey with somebody you actually do trust. And I just don't know who to point you for that, without being self-serving, of course,
Does it make sense to, if you are trying to be competitive with the people that do have a view, and you don't have a view, would it make sense to pay a muralist to come in and paint a view?
I remember seeing a funny video where somebody did that, like a fake ocean view,
Like
and
a
it
real
pissed somebody
good
off
view.
real bad.
And it
Pissed them
makes
off
you-
real bad. No, because they felt like they got. They felt like they got scammed.
Wait, did you clarify that it was fake?
Like a painted view?
Yeah, the view was painted, and the person's like, "What the hell is this?" It was really weird. I don't think so. I don't think a mural of what you hoped your view would be the mural that I would make. If I was in Rome and I wanted to do a mural of something, and I was by the Colosseum but didn't have a Colosseum view, I'd probably do like a mural of like the Trevi Fountain or something else, so it doesn't look like I'm being jealous or try hard. I want to create a disconnect from the thing that is lacking in my unit. Would be the way I would do that.
In an event you are lacking that view, what could you use to compensate?
You compete on price. You really do just compete on price. Otherwise, you add features that no one else has. Some gimmicks. You could hang like a part of your design style. Let's say you did, remember that emerald green room that I was talking about? Imagine it was emerald green and gold, and you had a gold birdcage chair, and you hung the birdcage chair from the ceiling. So it hung, and it had a chain. Just the fact that it's a hanging chair is really cool in the photos. People go, oh my God, this is popping, this is really cool. So if you had like hanging chairs or like hot tubs when no one else has a hot tub or a sauna, or I was telling her about big pieces of artwork. What I do now is I will unroll canvas and I will make a huge 8-foot by 10-foot painting in the living room, and then I'll put it on canvas bars and hang it on the wall. The painting could have made it into the space because it's too big, and no one else has oversized pieces of paintings. So I'll do like a Dutch pour or like a splash painting on the floor, and then put this massive painting on the wall that no one else would have. So there's things like that no one else can do. You want to be a one of one in any way significant. And she does murals here. Like she does a lot of like faux designs and murals. If everybody has a mural, then the mural's not special anymore. So in that way, you can say, just like I told you, go to Chicago, Dubai, Miami, and look at what's working and take it to the Midwest. You can do the same thing even in a competitive market. People kind of get lazy and settled into whatever's local. So you go to like Taos, New Mexico, you get a very specific design in Taos. You go to San Diego, you get a lot of the same designs in San Diego, but you go to Austin, everybody in Austin's like, let's do something different. So the one thing about Austin is there's not that same congruent approach to design there. Everybody's the wackiest shit. Pardon my French, guys. So you can take a market that has a very sleepy style, like South Florida, like Naples, Fort Lauderdale. A lot of people have the same stupid design. And then you go somewhere like Dubai or Chicago or like France or Prague or whatever, and just find some sort of design from a banging property there and bring that look. So that's why Japanese a very forward design style that people really like. There's also a Scandinavian design style that used like really dark accent walls, like almost black accent walls. That was really cool too. I also like this style I call it Gothic boho, where you paint the walls nearly black and then you do a boho design in the space. So you've got all the big plants and all the wicker and wood and stuff, but the whole room's black. And it looks epic. And that bridges into contrast and color theory. So let's say you do have a property that's by the Roman Colosseum, and all the design styles are like white and like gray and pink or whatever. Then yeah, you can go with a very dark tones, very deep tones, very different design, and people might love your design so much and see that no one else has anything like it, and you become more scarce in the way that you're the only one with that look, that people might book you because they find your design style more scarce than the view. For the Roman Colosseum, I think that's hard to pull off because that is such a staple, but in other places, preferential view, like ocean view instead. Like if you're in Miami, ocean view may not be the most important thing because everybody's got ocean view, but if you got a design style no one else can have, then you do become one of one there. Any other questions? Yeah.
How close does a rental property or have to be to a great location?
There's two considerations for location. One, I call radial proximity of interest, like a bullseye dartboard. And imagine that the location is, I don't know, the Eiffel Tower. The smaller the group, the closer they need to be to the Eiffel Tower. The larger the group, the further out. It's almost like a ripple effect. And I've noticed that depending on the location, like if I needed to be by a convention center, I'd probably want to be like 4 blocks, 5 blocks away. It's like hyper preferential for like a single individual, group of 2. Within a quarter mile for like 2, 3, 4, 5 people. But then when you have a house that sleeps 14 people, like say for Chicago, people be gladly 25 minutes away from downtown because there's other considerations. And what I've noticed with larger groups is you can draw a football shape between the airport and that destination that they want to go to. And that's like your logistical field of relevance, you could call it. People will land at the airport and just want to stay somewhere between the airport and where they're actually going. And it's logistically logical, and that makes sense. There's another thing I like to do is overlap a bunch of locations that are interesting. So let's say, like for example, Chicago, you've got the Bean, but you got Wrigley Field and you got other stuff. Those, if you draw circles and they overlap at one point, get your place right where they overlap. Because now you've got a location robust place. But what's also a hack for this is anywhere in that circle is relevant. So I did this in Houston, where the George R. Brown Center is. On the left side or on the west side, everything was expensive, but on the east side was East Downtown. And so exactly a quarter mile away, the rents were $1,500 more a month here than here. And I was able to wedge an extra $1,500 a month of profit by paying less rent because I was equal distance from the George R. Brown Center. So that I use radial proximity as a way to decide what neighborhoods I want to go into. If you already have a property, the best thing for you to do is actually to search your area on Airbnb, see what pops up, and check to see if the calendars are getting booked. And then see what prices they're getting booked for, stuff like that. If there's two types of market research, guys, I guess. There's one is like, what kind of property should I pick up? And two, does this property work? And in your case, if you already own a property, your standard is going to be different. Because like, are you going to make enough money to make it worth keeping in your portfolio and not as a long-term? And a lot of cases, short-term rentals make a ton of money. So if you think, well, am I going to be a long-term rental guy or a short-term rental guy? You're almost always going to be a short-term rental guy. Now, it will be extra work. You're going to have turnovers and housekeepers, but the amount of money we make on a property usually exceeds so much that it's almost a no-brainer anytime you have a property. But if you guys are looking to pick up properties, the two types of market research I do is opportunity finding, which I go into Airbnb and look for what properties are doing best, and I find out that like Cleveland are those big like brick like full windows. Then I go and try to find a property just like that. But other times I find a property that's just got a great price point, lower, like we're trying to invest in an area where we think there's going to be a lot of appreciation. So now I've got to find out if this type of property will do good enough to be worth taking on that specific property. And of course, then I still go to Airbnb, but I'm looking to find listings like the one I want to create with those restrictions, and I'm trying to prove that that market exists there too. A lot of the same, if that makes sense. How are we on time? We got time for more? Who's got a stumper?
Some of my properties are in Huntsville, Alabama,
Okay.
and all we have really that's consistent year-round is the Space and Rocket Center. But what you don't see are homes that have Space and Rocket Center themes. It is 1 month out of the year that does a lot of space camps, and that's when a lot of families come. But families come, for the holidays, whatever, it's just kind of the thing in Huntsville. Do you think, because there aren't many themed Space and Rocket Center rooms, that would be a benefit to, it would definitely separate, but it's separating based on, just families with kids, blah, blah, blah.
And there are a couple of rooms like that already?
No.
Okay, then yes. Because if there were a couple already, I would spy on their calendars and see if they've got a long lead time. When somebody gets a long lead time, like they're booked 4 months in advance, it's either their listing is perfect and people want it, or they're too cheap, right? They've won preference. They've won preference to such a degree that they're booked 4 months out. They're either won preference on market fit or on price. So if you know that there's a volume of people who love this thing about Huntsville, and no one is doing it all year, then you could meet the market there. And now here's the thing. If any of you guys want to swing the bat and take a risk, we should maybe just consider the unwinding cost. If it fails, what is the cost of failure? And there's two sides to this. You either spend the money and don't get the return, and so you just have this initial sunk cost, or you decide, I'm going to do a Saw-themed haunted Airbnb, where there's limbs all over the floors, and nobody books it. And so not only do you don't just get average performance, you get sub-average performance because you scared the shit out of everybody, and then you have to undo it. So some of your themes could be no harm, no foul, it'll just perform as normal, and some might be such a whiff that you'd have to spend money to undo it. And I don't think that yours sounds like a big enough risk that you'd have to unwind it, because some things are super gaudy. I took a risk, I did a unicorn-themed property in Philly, and we painted all the walls baby bell blue and then painted like little cartoon unicorns on all the walls. It was a smash hit, so much so that we had bachelorette parties every night till 6 a.m. and the city shut me down. But I had the same worry that it was going to do so bad that we'd have to undo it. And so when you do something really risky, it might go so poorly that you'd have to undo it. But that was my first theme property, and it was a banger. So yeah, I would try it, as long as, how much money are you thinking that it would take you to do that versus another regular approach?
About 6,000, and that's making the walk-in bed and having some three-dimensional,
Okay.
stuff. Probably about 6,000 for the 2 rooms that are, it's a 3-bedroom, so of course not the master, but the 2 guest rooms making the thing.
How many bedrooms is it?
It's 3.
Okay, cool. The larger the property, the easier it is to justify this, because our industry works in per head unit economics. You can have a really terrible property that makes $25 per head for 3 people or 15 people, and the 25 matters at 15. One of my students outside of Atlanta, we found her a property where it's a 5-bedroom house for $1,800, where everything else around is $4,000. And just because of that, she can sleep 16 people, and she can charge $20 less per night than her competition per head and still have a margin. But in your case, 3-bedroom property, I think that's good enough. I would still do some themes on a 2-bedroom. I'd still do themes on a 2. And I amortize over 2 years. So I try to break up my cost over 2 years. So if I'm gonna spend $6,000, that's $3,000 a year that I would need to justify. So you're looking at less than $10 a day?
Well, plus you can, if it's on canvas, if the mural's on canvas and not on the wall, then you sell the canvas if it doesn't work. Or if you have a family coming in, guess what? If you've got a couple coming in and it's not kids, take it down. So then put up a mural that on canvas that can be taken, removed, or put up depending on who your people are that's coming. It's a lot easier than cleaning a house.
You're 100% correct. So for anybody who didn't listen, and maybe virtual audience, the idea of doing themed or designs that are removable and then movable is huge, especially in arbitrage. So the reason why I like doing paintings is I can tear the painting down, roll it up, and move it. Facades, like fake walls, you can, like say you have an ugly window. We've done this. 3 minutes? Okay, cool. Let's say you have a super ugly window in a bedroom, and you just can't put the headboard anywhere because it's a stupid mole of a window. You just put a 2x4 up and some drywall, and you actually cover it up. And what's cool is you can actually backlight the very outer edge of the wall too. So you can make like a recessed LED lighting for the room too. Because you put some 2x4, put some drywall up, put the recessed lighting, and then wallpaper it. Next thing you know, the wall's cool. And when you move out, you just take the drywall down, take the 2x4s with you, and scoot. So yeah, non-permanent facades and theme stuff is great, because especially if a design works, but you have to move in arbitrage, you still have all this stuff.
Have you ever had an issue or worked with anyone that had an issue with squatters?
Okay, I've got a couple of anti-squatter techniques. So by law, you can't do certain things. Before the squatter knows that you're onto them, you can say, hey, I've got another guest coming in a couple of days, and they're probably lying to you saying that they need to pay or whatever, they're trying to get their money right. Go, hey, can I move you to this other house or other apartment? Because I can't lose the money for this one, but I'll let you move. Here's the keys for the other one. Like, you sound like full trust. Here's the keys. Go move in. They move in, you call the cops, go, hey, this person came in yesterday, they're trespassing. They lose their priority for having tenants rights because you got them to move. That's worked so many times, by the way. It's worked a ton. The other one is if they refuse to leave, you tell the cops that you have personal effects in the listing and they've made threats against your life and you need a police escort to remove your personal effects. And your personal effects are all the furniture. You remove everything, the beds, the TV, the couches, because a landlord cannot shut off the electricity, the water, the internet is a utility, so you can't shut that off. You can't remove the front door or the windows, but you can remove all your furniture. And the moment that an Airbnb has no furniture, a person's not gonna squat anymore. They squatted in an Airbnb because they don't have the furniture to move in and squat. So then they go find another sucker. Between those two things, I've never had to go to an Airbnb or eviction court because one of those two has worked every time.
Do you recommend to purchase a property inside a hotel and let them manage your property?
No, they're trying to make money off you. And don't do this with an apartment complex either, because they're gonna charge you a percentage to run it. It's the fact that there's so many people taking your money and Airbnb's taking 14%, and you've got so much competition in the hotel, I really don't think that that's where I would go. Now, I might actually eat my foot one day by being wrong, because let's say you did it in a part of the world that was like super upcoming like Tulum and there was just not enough inventory.
Nashville area, where now Airbnb coming out huge.
I think that's risky. Nashville's been Airbnb big long enough that their supply has met equilibrium. Remember what I talked about? So this concept of, are we at equilibrium? And you could buy into a condo hotel or a building where it's not at equilibrium, and you'd have a much better opportunity to make a lot of money. I would rather, actually in Tulum, they've got these villas that are $3 grand a month furnished, and they're making 20 grand a month right now in Tulum because they built a new airport. So if you wanted to buy into anywhere, buy into Tulum right now. Okay, good. You could even find housekeepers that won't screw you over on price. So do it. Maybe that's why that came to me. But no, I would not buy in where somebody is trying to sell you their shovels. A lot of Airbnb or short-term rentals is value creation like any other business, and we need to find something that makes money that other people haven't realized yet, so we need to be more insulated. And the one thing I don't like is being one apartment in a building of 100 other Airbnbs, because I've got to compete with all 100, and if anybody else screws something up and they change regulations or rules because somebody else did something douchey, now I'm going to have a problem. So avoid it.
I live in Gallenberg, and I have a YouTube, TikTok, Facebook channel.
Cool.
And people go to these cabins. It's not a question, it's really they go to these cabins that have like 10, 15 people, but the driveway is only allowed to accommodate 1 or 2 cars. That is the number one complaint I get.
Sure.
Why are there so many cabins with 10, 15 rooms, but you know, the size of 2 cars in the driveway. A lot of people complain about that.
Well, if I was going to give you an anthropological answer, I think maybe it's because lot sizes were decided based on regular families, and then people found out that there's so much money to be made here that people started building different properties that weren't on the lots that the nature wasn't for this. And so now people are building to maximize size, and they didn't know that they were going to have a problem. It's like building the most powerful phone in the world and putting a really small battery in it. This is a problem that now, and if you can take advantage of this, then take advantage of it. Maybe start a business that builds the lifts for an extra car. Start selling everybody an extra car lift, and you make a ton of money for anybody who has an issue with that. And since you do stuff that, if you're building the properties that have a really cool, like you're going for design-friendly spaces, I like building stuff and showing people what kind of photos they can get. I've been using Peerspace, and I noticed that the best way to market on Peerspace is to show the looks that you can give somebody in your space. So if you have a space that's got a lot of Instagram wall potential, try to show what that final influencer product could look like, and you'll get bookings on Peerspace too, not just on Instagram, which is really cool. Peerspace. They rent by the hour. I've made $4,000 one evening on a Peerspace. Yeah, some MSU student. It's really good. Crushed it. Yeah. All right, guys, thank you so much. I'll still be around to answer questions, just not with a microphone attached to me.